they've all put in incredible time and effort to bring this conference together. So we know it's a parent scientific conference, but I can't thank you all enough, the parents who've been on this committee, because I know you have loads in your life, and to add organising to it has been brilliant, so thank you. Okay. I might use this one. Okay, I'll use this one. Sorry. All right, the process of advocacy is the process of supporting an individual to be heard. The individual is placed at the centre of the process and is supported to whatever. Public support for a recommendation of a particular cause or policy. It's also an activity by an individual or group which aims to influence decisions and political, economic and social systems and institutions. And we have synonyms down the bottom. The Disability Advocacy Resource Unit of Victoria says that disability advocacy is acting, speaking or writing to promote, protect and defend the human rights of people with a disability, so that they are valued and included members of the community, their fundamental needs are met and their human rights are respected, says Disability Advocacy Network of Australia. I passionately believe that every person with PWS has the right to consistency, stability and good health to achieve happiness and longevity. And that's what I think we are all about, I hope. So my talk is from a clinician's point of view. I have a clinic for adolescents and adults with PWS in Sydney. And I advocate to family, so this is not the true advocacy we're talking about, it's advocacy from my point of view, and then Lisa's going to talk about advocacy as a parent. So I'll go through mine very quickly because we are a bit out of time. So I advocate to family for understanding of PWS, so that they, what was mentioned, I think you mentioned it, BJ, that they learn that the difficult behaviour or mechanisms we see in people with PWS are traits of PWS. They're not personality defects, or they're not kids being difficult, they are traits of PWS. It's so important for families, and not just immediate family, extended family, and it's immediate family who teach the extended family how people with PWS think. There is a beautiful PWS USA paper on this, and I'll show it at the end. Duty of care, obviously that goes without saying. How to apply appropriate choice in all family members' homes. Responsibility of you as parents, obviously that goes without saying, but also remembering that our guys are not silly. They can have a responsibility as well, and they thrive with responsibility. Our aim is to provide the best possible environment within and outside the family home, and this only comes by educating everybody in the life of your person with PWS about PWS, and give them wads of information and make sure they sit down and listen and know what it's all about. And I'm not being sexist, but sometimes it's dads that we really have to work on hard, not Derek, but and probably not any of the dads here, but I do have, you know, some mothers who struggle with this. And the PWS traits I'm talking about are all the big ones: concrete thinking, delayed processing, impaired problem solving. They get distracted, they get focused. They're change sensitive, we need to prepare them for change. They have heightened anxiety, which we know, and of course there's the big one, the lack of satiety. And is stealing stealing? Is taking food, taking money? No. As Linda many years ago said, it's a survival mechanism for this lack of satiety, and I've never forgotten that. I advocate to caregivers and ask parents to advocate to caregivers to teach about the traits, not personality, how people think, how they respond to the way we speak to them. We need to keep calm. Duty of care is a caregiver's responsibility, and the duty of care is about their fitness, their health, their weight, their money taking, their access to food. It's all a duty of care of caregivers who are spending any time with your people with PWS. We need trained, PWS trained staff. They need to know the facts. They need to have a medical alerts booklet on hand. They need to understand the complexity of PWS that requires specific support, not support you just give anyone with a disability and its lifetime. Duty of care, as I've just mentioned, I'm not going to rave on. We advocate to educators, to service providers and to employers. If they are going to take on a role in that person with PWS's life, they need to provide an appropriate PWS environment. And yes, that's tough, and it might mean putting in lockers with locks that actually lock in a workplace. But if they're going to take on one of my clients with PWS, I expect them to step up to the mark and provide what is necessary. And I guess a big part of my role is going out to employers and schools, service providers, and train up about PWS and just tell them the facts and ask them to step up to the challenge. Again, it's the best environment, and that's basically what I've said. To professionals, and this is a big one, you know more about your child with PWS than any professional will, especially a professional who knows nothing about PWS. You know, in some countries we are very lucky we have got professionals who do know, but how many clinics are there for adults with PWS? There are a few clinics for kids, but in Australia there's probably 3 at the most. That's one in Adelaide, one in Sydney, and one in Brisbane. We need more clinics. We need professionals to know. And does it mean providing more money for a clinic? No, it doesn't. It means finding a professional, whether it's a dietitian, a physio, an endocrinologist, a dentist, and get them to see someone with PWS, and then get all your friends to go and see that same person and teach them about PWS. And then you will have someone qualified to work with your people with PWS. It's not rocket science and it's not impossible, but it does take a bit of hard work. Just here, we've been fortunate enough to, I wrote some years ago a policy for inpatients with PWS when they come into our hospital. We've had episodes where we had to go down to the emergency department and fight with the new interns and residents to actually treat our clients who've been brought in off the streets for about the 4th time. Yes, they damaged one of the sleep machines up in, and they've caused lots of damage in the hospital. And he said to me, is it worth trying to keep this guy alive? He just keeps going out. Oh my God. And I said, what? Did I hear you properly? So I got my boss to come down and we lied. And yes, lying is very helpful, Karen. I said, this guy's moving into a group home in 2 weeks. Very soon. I said, very, very soon. I probably didn't say 2 weeks. I try to protect myself. I said, well, of course we've got to get him alive, keep him alive. And so they did. Wasn't 2 weeks. It turned out to be about 8 months. But eventually he got into a group home and now he's doing incredibly well. So you've got to get out there and you've got to fight for our guys. And I know I'm raving and I know we're running out of time, but that's okay. I'm going to keep doing it. So policies. We had to put in place this policy because how many guys with PWS go into hospital for whatever reason and come out 5 kilos heavier or 10 kilos heavier, okay? Or the staff complain they're not very cooperative, they're not really listening to what I'm saying. And I said, you're probably using too many words. But this is so important. So we now have a hospital policy for RPA, and I have permission from our hospital policy person to share this policy. I was not allowed to some years ago, but now I can. So I can flick it to anyone who wants it. It's simple, it doesn't rave on, it just says what PWS is, but more importantly it says how to speak to someone with PWS, how to listen to someone with PWS. These are basic things, but if people don't know, they don't do it. Like the doctor who writes in the notes, patient wasn't very cooperative, because the doctor's asked them a question, they've been thinking about it, they haven't had time to process and come back with a correct response, and the doctor's moved on to the next question. So meanwhile, John wants to answer the first question. That's what you asked me, and they write down uncooperative. Okay. We know all this. Have on hand the medical alerts because it covers all these issues that we see in PWS that clinicians don't know about. And as Melanie said, see a dietitian who knows about PWS, otherwise it's not going to get you too far. This is our policy, it just talks about, and it's part of the hospital now, which is great. What we're trying to do is motivate. We're trying to motivate, not denigrate our person with PWS. Now, I just use it, we know all about carp fish who are orange, ready orange, orange is the colour for hunger. So just a way of remembering is, I've got a red carp here, or red carps. We need to respect the person with PWS, which always comes first. We need to respect PWS itself, and we can't do that unless we understand it and know what it's about. We need to challenge our guys. How often I challenge you, Kate, and said, I think you can do that a bit better or a bit longer, and all guys with PWS like a challenge. I usually work on quiet agreement. What do you think? Do you think that would be a good idea? Yeah. Okay, let's do it. Okay, let's add another minute. Responsibility. Guys with PWS aren't silly. They're extremely capable in lots of areas. You pick your area and you give them some responsibility. How often are they in trouble? Do our guys with PWS seem to be in trouble most of the time? They want to be responsible for the things they can do, so it's up to us to find out what that is. Praise, yes, everybody loves praise because the whole idea is to create a secure, safe environment for them. I believe, and this was said to me by an Aboriginal woman who was doing a launch of her book. She said, in the Aboriginal community, we control the environment so the child can run free. But she said that's all been lost. But if we control the environments that our people with PWS are in to make them PWS safe and appropriate, Cade said he likes to be safe, okay, then they can run free. What an ideal world. Okay, funding, advocating obviously goes on for funding bodies, NDIS. If you have problems with your NDIS, complain and go to the New South Wales, it's the Fair Trade Department, has a separate section for people who have complaints about NDIS or service providers. And again, teach them. Law enforcement, if your person with PWS gets involved with the law, there are articles that you can download to take for the support. IPSO has a statement on law enforcement. PWSA USA has one for children and for adults. These things are all available online. Then, as was mentioned yesterday, aim for a Section 32, which describes people with intellectual disabilities falling into the category of being able to divert them out of the criminal justice system, because you can prove that they were not capable for what they were doing. Okay, and use this, and you might need to get a psychiatrist to assess them, but use all these tools. And yes, everybody wants evidence-based information. So fortunately, as part of the International Prader-Willi Syndrome Association, we have the Clinical and Scientific Advisory Board. Now they approve everything that we put up on our site before it goes there. There is lots of information on Google and everywhere else, but please use approved documentation that you can take as part of your advocacy. There are some brilliant ones. Primer for psychiatrists. Please take this to psychiatrists before if they haven't seen anyone with PWS before. For clinicians, the adult medical care, biophysicians, evaluation of individuals with PWS, they're all available on our IPSO site. FamCare has produced articles for dealing with adults with PWS who live at home or even who don't live at home. We have all these articles now up on the website, and they're in several different languages, coping with change, etc. They're brief, they're succinct, but hopefully they're very helpful. So the websites to look at are ipso.org, pwsa.org.au, that's the Australian one, pwsa.co.uk, the UK one obviously, and then the last one is PWSA USA. They are brilliant sites. They have fabulous information that can be downloaded for free. If you haven't yet been to your NDIS plan, there's loads of information on the Australian site that was written by the association with an NDIS grant, so please use it. I've raved and I've talked very quickly, I'm sorry, but now Lisa's going to talk to you about advocacy as a parent.
I'm going to be even quicker. I don't even have a presentation to put up there. But having done a lot of advocacy for my 18-year-old daughter over the last few years, there are a few tips that I'd like to put out, a few things that I didn't quite do right in the early years that I wish I had done. And one of those things is I was always very nervous going to meetings, especially if things weren't going well at school, at preschool, or at the hospital. And I wish then that I had done what I do now, which is take somebody with me, somebody who doesn't have the emotional involvement, who isn't going to get all upset when something's said about their child, and take somebody, even not necessarily a friend, somebody from the school, and don't be afraid if you don't get the answers you want to keep going higher. Sometimes you just have to keep bringing, especially in the education department. I've made many phone calls trying to get somebody to help me to come along and advocate for my child. And it's been the same with the hospital as well. And also, I think when you are advocating for your child, you have to have in the back of your mind, I'm also advocating for the children coming through, because we are where we are, especially in Australia and in Queensland, because of the people who have come before us. And so every time you stand up for your child, you're standing up for those little ones. Thank you.
Well done, Lisa. I don't know where we would be without the Lisas of the world and without the Georginas of the world. I don't know where we would be without the professionals who care even more sometimes than we do. And advocacy is a really, really important thing. There's a characteristic in Prader-Willi syndrome, which we all know and respect, is that if something goes wrong, you go to the highest possible person you can reach, even to the letter of the law, you know, the law of the land. And that's where we need to go with advocacy. You said keep phoning, go higher, go higher. I want to thank you all for being here. It's a really packed room. It's been a fantastic morning. I've enjoyed it. I hope you have. Lunch is on the table. We've done extraordinarily well. It's only 1 minute past 1. Back here at 2 o'clock. See you all then.
Yes, I've got them at the desk for the next session. For the education? Yes. Okay.